Hello and welcome to another episode of Moodle Training for DL staff. In this video, we're going to talk about sections, also known as topics in a course, as well as blocks in your course. We'll talk about these two elements of the course, how to edit their settings, move them around, add and remove them. So let's get started. I've logged in here. I'm going to scroll down and enter a course. And we've looked at the course page a little bit in the videos so far, but we're going to examine it in a little more detail in this video. Notice in the middle pane, the middle of your screen, you can see all of the sections in this course. A section can correspond to a lesson in your course. As in this Latin course, each section represents a lesson. And because there are 80 or so lessons, you'll see 80 or so sections. But your course may be organized into units, in which case each section would represent a unit or perhaps part of a unit. If you'll notice the very first section, called General Resources, so this is a special section. It'll appear at the top of your course page, whether you're looking at the entire list of sections or whether you're just looking at one section. Even if you're just looking at one section, it'll appear at the top of the page. This section is useful to contain resources for students that they'll need to access throughout the duration of their course, maybe on every lesson. For example, the syllabus or course-wide resources, maybe an announcements forum, or a virtual classroom you've set up through Big Blue Button. But let's say I've got a section here and I want to edit it. I want to give it a new name. I want to type a little summary about it and change some of its settings. Well, in order to change the settings of a section, the first thing I have to do is turn editing on. You'll notice there's a button in the top right-hand corner here called Turn Editing On. I've got to click that before I'm able to make any changes to the sections. And once editing is turned on, you'll notice that you have a couple extra buttons on the screen. You can see in the individual activities and resources, you've got some buttons around them, a new menu, but we're going to look at the extra buttons in a section today. So now I see under this Topic 1 section, I see a little gear button underneath it. When I hover my cursor over it, it says Edit Summary. Let's click that and we'll be able to change some of the settings for this section. Now when you're working with a new course or when you've just added a new section to your course, Moodle will give it a default name of topic plus a number, for example, Topic 1 here. That's the default section name. But I don't want to use that boring name. I want to give it my own name. So I'm going to uncheck Use Default Section Name and type it, and type a new name for it. This section is going to contain resources for KAT staff. So let's call this section Resources for KAT staff. Makes sense. Now underneath that is a summary section. The summary will appear right underneath the name of the section on the course page. So if you want to give a little more information about what's contained in that section or lesson or unit, you can type that here. And finally, at the bottom of the page, there's a group of settings called Access Restrictions. Now, this section is going to contain resources for KAT staff, things that I don't want students or even school facilitators to access or see. So I'm going to add a restriction here. And in this course, I've set up groups for the different kinds of users of this course. For example, I have a group called KAT staff. We'll talk in a later video about creating groups and assigning students to group. But the point I want to make here is that you can restrict this section to be visible only to users who are a member of this KAT staff group. Okay, and I've already set up that group to contain all of the tutors and the teachers and myself in this course so that we can see this section, but no one else. So I've restricted it to KT staff, and I'm going to click this little I so that it's completely hidden from people who are not in this group. If I leave this I open, it will still be visible to other people. That is the title of the section, the name of the section, and the summary will still be visible, but other people will not be able to actually enter the section or click on any of the items inside it. But I want it to be completely hidden, so I'm going to close that I, and then I'm going to save changes. Okay, so we can see now that the page is loaded, my changes have been made. The title, the name of the section now says Resources for KAT Staff instead of that boring old Topic 1. And then immediately under that, I can see the section summary that I typed in. And then my section also contains information about who can access this section. It says it's not available unless you belong to KT staff, and it's hidden otherwise. All right, so in addition to editing the name and the summary and the access restrictions, there are a couple of other editing options for a section. Notice on the sides of the section on the right side, there are a couple of buttons. There's a light bulb button. If I click the light bulb button, the only thing that happens is that, notice my section changed color a little bit on the sides. It's yellow. Basically, the light bulb button highlights this section for all the users, so the students, anyone who looks at this course and is scrolling through all the sections will notice that this one section is highlighted. So if you want all of your users to be looking at one particular section, that might be a useful tool. Maybe not so useful to us in distance learning because all of our students may be at different points in the course, but that's what the highlight light bulb button does. I'm going to unhighlight this section, make it like just all the others. There's a little eyeball underneath that. It says hide topic. If I click that, what I've done is hidden this section. Now, I, as the teacher or the tutor, can still see it because I have special powers as teacher and tutor to see even hidden items. But because I have hidden this section, students will not be able to see it. So if there is a section that maybe you're still working on, you don't want students to be able to see it or click on it or do anything with it yet, you can hide it from them and they won't be able to see it or access it. Now, I do want this topic to be visible because I've actually set some other restrictions so that it won't be visible to students, but will be visible to KAT staff. So I don't need to hide that. Okay, we'll look at the button on the left here for moving sections in just a moment. First, I want to show you how to add or remove sections. There are actually two ways you can do this. The first way we saw in an earlier video. If you look at the left in the administration block and click on the Edit Settings link, it'll take you to the page of Course Settings. And if you scroll down to Course Format, you can change the number of sections here. So if I wanted to add a section or add a bunch of sections, I could add them all here. I can also remove a bunch of sections here as well. But there's another way to do it, so I'm going to cancel that. And I'm going to scroll to the very bottom of the course page. And you'll notice two tiny little buttons at the bottom of the course page for a plus and a minus. This is how you can increase and decrease the number of topics in your course. I'm going to add a topic by clicking the plus button. So you can see my topic has been added. It's been given the default boring name of topic 84, and it's empty. So I can click that gear button, edit the settings just like I did before. But what if I change my mind and decide I don't want that topic? I can also click this minus button to reduce the number of sections, and Moodle will take that section right off. Now, one important thing to note about removing sections, removing a section by clicking that little minus button does not delete the section. For example, this last section called Latin 102 Final Exam. It's got a couple of items in it, some quizzes, a questionnaire. If I remove it by clicking this subtraction button, notice that I no longer see a section called Latin 102 Final Exam, but it has been removed from my course, but the items inside it were not deleted. Instead, they're called orphaned activities. Moodle has created kind of an extra section here where it collects all of the items that were in that section that I removed. If I want to add that section back to my course, I can click the plus button and it will actually restore that section to the course. So really it's better to think of this as remove button as another way to hide a section, because it doesn't actually remove it, it doesn't actually delete it, it just takes it off of your list of sections in the course. Alright, so what if I add a section and I want to move it? Because you'll notice adding a section just adds to the end of my list. What if I want to move this final exam section earlier in the course? Well, there are a couple ways to do that. One of them is to use the moving button to the left of the section. I can click and drag to move the lesson a little further. Notice that when I drag it, a little ghost version of the section appears, and I can kind of move it up in the course list. This is the drag and drop method of moving sections. Now, I will say Moodle is a little finicky with the drag and drop. I recommend that once you move it using this method, that you go ahead and refresh the page, just to force Moodle to kind of reset everything and kind of catch up with the changes that you've made. I've noticed that sometimes if you try to move a section, Moodle gets a little confused. So my recommendation is always to refresh the page after you've moved a section. But now I see that this section has been moved up a couple lessons. Now that's nice if you want to move a section, maybe 1 or 2 lessons. But what if you want to move it from one end of your course to the other? It can be cumbersome to drag and drop a section from the beginning of your course to the end, or vice versa. So there's an easier way. Instead of actually clicking this button, holding it down and dragging the section, you can also just single click it, click the button once, and Moodle will show you a little window. And you can scroll it. It's just a list of all of the sections in your course. And let's say I want to move this section to the right after the introduction. Make them take the final right after the introduction. If I click that link, it will move that section right where I told it to. But like I said, every time you move a section, it's always a good idea to hit refresh, because you'll notice that the items in that section are there, but it's given the wrong name. Moodle is confused right now, so I'm going to refresh the page and everything will be magically fixed. Moodle will kind of reset itself and catch up with the changes that I've made. Okay, now if I scroll up to the top, there's my new final exam section right after the introduction to Latin 1. So again, the lesson to learn there, the 2 methods for moving a section, drag and drop it using this, or just click that button and select the section you want it to be moved after, but always refresh your page after you've moved the section. All right, I'm going to actually move that section back at the end where it belongs. All right, so that's how to work with sections. We talked about editing the settings, editing the name and the summary and the access restrictions for a section. Talked about adding, removing, and moving sections. I also want to talk in this video about blocks. We talked a little bit about blocks already. These sections on the sides of your screen you see on a lot of Moodle pages. Well, inside your course you can change the blocks that appear, and you can arrange them however you like them. So let me show you how to do this. The first step is to turn editing on. Editing is already turned on here, but just make sure you've got that turned on. And what we're going to do first is we're going to add a block. To add a block, look at the left side of the screen, and you're going to scroll down until you get to the end of all of the blocks in your course on the left side. And in this course, there are a lot of them. But once you reach the end, you'll see a little box that says Add a Block. And again, this will only appear if editing is turned on. So if you don't see this, make sure that editing is turned on in your course. When I click that, I can see all the different kinds of blocks that I can add to my course. Now, we're not going to go through every individual one of these. You're free to explore that on your own. But I will show you. Let's add a messaging block to my course, to this course. So I'm going to click Messages. A messaging block will display any new messages from students. Now, when you add a block, by default, it places it on the left side at the very bottom, which, as we saw, is a long way down in this course. But so I don't want it to stay there. Maybe I want this to be kind of at the top, near the top of the page. So I want to move it. Well, just like when we moved sections, there's a little move button. And if I drag and drop that and kind of use the wheel of my mouse to scroll up, I can move it to the top over here on the left side, or maybe over here on the right side. I'm going to put it right underneath the logged in user block right there. Drag it there, drop it there. All right, there's my messages block. There are a couple of other settings for a block. Notice that you can hide a block by clicking the little minimize button there. Hiding a block will basically collapse it so that the contents of it are not visible. And now I can press the plus sign to expand it. I can also dock the block by clicking the dock button. We've seen how to dock blocks before. Now, the gear button will open up a menu where I can set other settings for this block. Let's click on the Configure Messages block to see some of the other settings. All right, where this block appears here, you can set the pages you want this block to display on, whether it's the course main page or any course page or any page inside of this course. We'll leave it on the course main page though. The default region, where this block will appear by default. Now, for this page, you'll notice I moved it over to the right side by dragging and dropping it there. But the default region still says left because by default, that's where it goes. When we first created it, it was over on the left side. So I'll say let's make the default be the right side. And then the weight is how high or low it appears in the list of blocks. The higher the number, the lower it appears in the list. So the very low number, like -10, will place it in the first position in the list of blocks. This is, again, the default settings for it. And then beneath those settings are the settings for this page. We're working on the course main page. So here we can set the settings that are specific to this course main page. And it's visible, it's on the right side, and right now it has a weight of -3. So let's save those changes. And there are a couple of other settings when you click on the gear menu under the block. I can hide the messages block just like I did by minimizing it right there. It does the same thing. I can assign roles in this block. We'll talk about assigning roles in a later video, so I'm going to skip over that for now. And the last thing is to delete the messages block. So if I add a block, but I don't want it, I can delete it by clicking that button. And so we can see that the block has been removed. So that wraps it up for blocks in this video. We talked about sections, editing sections, creating, removing, and moving sections, and sort of the same features of blocks. Thanks for watching.